So I was in a hotel recently and I was having a flick through the TV because it's the only time I ever see any live TV anymore is if I'm in a hotel or like staying elsewhere. So I was having a little flick through the shows that were on, and it just seemed like 80% of shows now are either Hell's Kitchen or shows that are formatted like Hell's Kitchen, you know, with like
What's that?
challenges and
Reality.
yeah, Gordon Ramsay's
Oh,
Hell's
yeah.
Kitchen.
It's cheaper, isn't it?
Yeah. So like, let's get a bunch of people together and, you know, creative people, artists, chefs, you know, whatever the format is, and put them under lots of stress, make them do all these challenges, and then they'll be judged and voted off or whatever, carried forward to the next challenge.
I bet they don't get paid, or I don't know. Like,
Well, this is the
depends.
thing, because I feel like shows like this have really, I don't know, I feel like shows like this must have impacted how we view artists, you know, people working in creative fields. And I don't know, it just feels like it's a kind of normalizing of exploitation and, you know, putting the artists under all this stress. And yeah, like you say, I think it's unlikely that any of them get paid to be on these shows. And I know for some shows that is the case, like Project Runway, which we watch and love. And it was, yeah, I think it was probably one of the first shows to do this format of like, but get a bunch of fashion designers from all over the States and gather them together in New York and put them through all these challenges and yeah, be judged. And one
Be
person,
grateful that you work for free.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we know, because we've looked into it, that they didn't get paid to be on that show. You know, they basically have to give up their whole life for 8 weeks or however long it takes them to shoot the series and go to New York and be sort of crushed. I mean, you watch them go through these challenges and by the end they're just so burned out. And I don't know, it just makes me think about what the impact of that is on how we view artists and how, oh, well, they should just be grateful for the exposure, you know, they should just be grateful for getting their name out there on TV. And I'm sure that does benefit some of them, but it's just this old thing of, oh, well, we should be grateful for the exposure bullshit that we stick on artists in order to exploit them.
It is weird. Yeah, it's a bit conflicting, isn't it? Because I do really like watching the show.
Yeah, it's a great format because
Yeah.
you get to see the creative process broken down and you get to see people grow throughout the series, which is nice.
Yeah.
You get to see people's arcs. It's great stories.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, what does it cost? What does it cost those artists? And what does it cost how we view artists and what's being normalised?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Even the models don't get paid.
Yeah. Oh, the way they treat the models on Project Runway is hideous.
Yeah, we are like watching the older series now where it's like way more murky.
Oh yeah, it's dark because it's Harvey Weinstein at the helm. It's his show, you know, it's his format.
Yeah, we had to skip an episode, didn't we, where they got the models to dress up in bikinis and go and like seduce this fucking dirtbag guy in a bar.
Yeah,
like,
this columnist from the New York Post.
One of them was like fucking 16.
Yeah, the models are like 16, 17, and they have them like parading around in swimwear, so like, you know, pretty close to naked at this party, and everyone's drinking, and there's this sleazy columnist who's obviously mates with Weinstein.
Yeah.
Leering at all these models and like making all these jokes about like, oh, 16 isn't even legal, is it? And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, we had to turn it off.
In fucking 2004, like, that was acceptable.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
So, yeah, it's difficult to watch those older series.
It is interesting though, because like they do have to. Well, the guy who won the first one just turned it down because of the contract was basically that he had to give Weinstein 10% of all of his profits for the rest of his life. So he decided to not sign the contract and didn't take the 100,000.
Yeah, but how
Fair
fucked
play.
up is that they tried to pull that 10% of your earnings for the rest of your life is going to Weinstein if you take the winnings.
Yeah, it's going towards like abuse.
Yeah,
Basically, you're
going
paying
back into that machine.
Yeah,
Of abuse and exploitation. And yeah, so that was one of the first reality shows probably to set up that format of let's exploit artists and models and,
Yeah.
everyone involved.
How
in
can we
this.
get everyone to work for free? Models work for free. They didn't pay Tim Gunn. He worked for free.
For 2 seasons of the show, Tim Gunn wasn't getting paid.
And they didn't pay the models. And, who knows what other things were going on as well with, like, I don't know, runners that probably weren't getting paid and all of this stuff. It's
Who knows
rough.
what the crew were going through.
Yeah.
Because it must be quite a grueling thing to have to set up and organise and shoot. I'm sure there are a lot of unhappy people behind the scenes of that show and all of these shows that are based on this format.
But they are fun to watch, though.
Yeah. Yeah, problematic faves.
Yeah, I just like seeing the designers being put in situations where they have to like come up with creative ideas, and it's interesting. Like, I'm always looking for that artistic one. There's usually one, or sometimes none, but usually one or two people who are like really artistic who do conceptual design, and
Yeah,
it's
usually
really
get
interesting to me.
one kind of artist, quote unquote.
But she was voted off, actually, was she, on the season we're watching at the moment, which is season 2.
They usually don't win.
Well, sometimes they do, right? Like, what's his name with Brandon?
Kentaro.
Yannick.
That's making the cut.
Okay, I get them confused. Yeah. Sometimes artists do win, and sometimes people win who like are commercial, like Gretchen, and then like success isn't good for them. And then sometimes people who don't win, who are artistic, like Mondo, actually have like really interesting careers, because we often like look into it, don't we, afterwards, see what they're doing now. And Costa, Fabio Costa, who didn't win conceptual artistic designer, gender fluid, and he's just thriving. So sometimes like winning doesn't actually work out for them. Like Gretchen went back to school, weirdly, and then she just like started a mentoring thing. So yeah, it didn't really work out for her to be the winner. Sometimes like being number one, winning isn't like good for you. That's interesting as well. There's loads of interesting little details that like you're like, There's this idea of winning, that, or having your work on New York Fashion Week as being the dream, but it's just a step.
Yeah, I think it is just this misconception of success as sort of solving all of your problems. Like, oh, if I win, or if I get that deal, or whatever it is, I get my big break, then that will be it. I'll never kind of suffer again. I'll never have any other problems. It will just be great all the time. And I do think it's one of those sort of immature little
That's how they get you, isn't it?
that
That's
we all
the
have
carrot
in the back of our head.
It's like them dirty, fucking horrible, greasy abusive. Like they've all got this carrot that they're just like waving in front of people who are vulnerable. All of the creative industries do that, and like everyone's like conditioned in this weird way. As everyone's like, "Oh, I hope you get your big break, David. I hope you get your big break." It's like big breaks don't exist. Well, they do, but they're not they only exist. They're not the rule. They're super rare, like fucking, I don't know, eclipse or something. It's just like it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, mostly it's just small steps over many years, and they often just come out of the blue. You're just not expecting. You just get a little bit of luck.
Yeah, like when you're about to give up, like someone like puts a $5 in you, buy me a coffee or something, and you're like, oh, all right, I'll carry on then.
Speaking of which, you can buy us a coffee.
Yeah, and thank you to Anonymous, who listens to the podcast when they're in the kitchen making dinner. That was nice. That was really nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really do appreciate that.
Yeah, we do.
Gives us a little boost.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Yeah.
So yeah, we've now coined the term. They're trying to Weinstein me.
Yeah.
Like if someone is trying to get you to sign a fishy contract that just is totally exploitative. That's the term we use now. They're trying to Weinstein me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Always like negotiate. The contract is just a starting point of negotiation. And I think people, that's another one of them cliches, isn't it? It's like in Peep Show, they're like, shall we sign it? It's like, well, I don't trust her. And, I suspect that this is probably the wrong thing to do. And it's like, all right, let's fucking do it. Sign it. It's like, it's a weird, isn't it? Like, oh yeah, we're rock and roll. I'll sign it in blood. And, whatever happens. Like, yeah. So
it's a bit
weird.
like the concept of like the American dream. That's sort of just a lie, just a big empty,
again, like the eclipse, it does happen, but it's an exception to the rule. Yeah. And then we blow up those people, and that story becomes the story, but it's the exception, not the rule. It's weird. Yeah. Like we magnify the things that don't happen really as the thing, and then everyone like gravitates towards that, as opposed to having a more of a realistic outlook on things. Like in any other industry, you have way more of a realistic outlook on how the business works, how career works. But for some reason, and probably for good reason, because the abusive people can control, right? It's in their interests that the story is rigged. I'll give you your dreams, but you'll have to work for free. I'm not going to guarantee it. You have to do things for me that you don't want to.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, why is it the arts, do you think, that we perpetuate these stories?
It's the dream. I think people want the dream to be real, and that's understandable. I mean, like life is a dream. Like everything is a dream. Like, that is true. Like everything is a dream. Like lots of people who have dreamed things who are not alive anymore. Like this microphone, that was a dream of someone, or this building was a dream of someone, or whatever.
So like you say, in other industries, you have more realistic expectations, but specifically the arts, I think there's something about the idea of being an artist that feels liberating, maybe because it's part of the myth is that you're sort of free from the system, even though you're not.
But we're all artists, really. We're all people who have dreams. Every human being has a dream in them, of something that they have a desire to move towards. So, even the language itself, like, separates us, doesn't it? oh, you're an artist, like, and then we have like a preconceived idea about what that means that has been conditioned into us. You can be artistic or you can be practical. You can no. This. Yes, it's weird. It's dirty. It's greasy.
Grubby.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of vulnerable people in it, because a lot of people go into, you look at Project Runway, and a lot of the designers, they go into it because of they've had traumatic time, and like, I can relate to that. You need something for yourself, because like otherwise, like you can't really find another way to live your life. You need to have something that you can focus on. And a lot of the people on the show are gay and come from very religious families who don't accept them as being who they are, and that's incredibly difficult. So I think moving towards an industry where there's more acceptance of who you are, your sexuality, your view of life, is attractive to you. So I think it's a driving force, but part of that is coming from a place of being incredibly vulnerable and incredibly wounded. And I think you look at predators and they're looking for people who are wounded. They're looking for victims. That they can see their pain because they also understand the pain in themselves, but instead of expressing it in a kind of beautiful way, they want to abuse other people. So like they see that they can do it because society has invented this story where that is allowed. If you're famous, if you're rich, you can do what you want. You can abuse people and no one can stop you. And so they go towards those jobs of being the people in charge of people with dreams who are wounded, and then they're victims to those people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. So what is the message?
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself.
Stand up for yourself.
Don't sign that contract.
Don't sign the contract.
Do a Jay McCarroll from season 1 and refuse the prize money.
Refuse the prize money. If it doesn't
feel right, if they're asking for 10% of everything you earn for the rest of your life, then tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing, you have to be willing to walk away. And I think that's hard for a lot of us. I had a recent experience where I was appearing on another podcast, telling a story. It's like a storytelling podcast. And so I submitted a story and it got accepted, and I went through this whole process of recording the story and being coached to make it better and all of that, which was a great process actually, and I learned a lot from it. But it was quite a long process. It played out over about 6 months from when I first submitted the story. And then after the recording had been done and it seemed like we were at the end of the process, they were like, oh, we're going to send you a release form, so just sign it and get back to us, and then we can arrange for the episode to be released. And they sent me this contract, very, very long, dense contract, a lot of legal jargon in it, but I tried my best to kind of pick it apart. And it just seemed really like dodgy. It gave me that feeling like, am I being Weinsteined here? Because it was giving them the right to take the story and make it into, a TV show or a movie, or, option it, basically giving them the optioning rights for the story. And this was a true story that happened to me. It's from my life. And I had that instinct in the first instance to just sign it, to say, oh, fuck it, it's fine. I want the episode to come out. I've put in all this time and effort really honing this story. And so I'll just sign it, fuck it, and I think that is an impulse that is very natural when you've put so much time into something. It's the sunk cost fallacy. But I stopped myself and thought about it and decided to challenge. I consulted with David about it, and he also agreed that it should be challenged. So I drafted an email and got back to them just saying, I'm not comfortable with the contract as it stands. And that was quite scary for me because it's like setting a boundary. And I think there's also this impulse to not want to be a hassle, like not want to cause a fuss by challenging.
Henry Hassel.
Which I think is also a very natural impulse, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser like I am. Setting boundaries is hard, saying no is hard. And again, it goes back to that, I'll just sign it and make this process easy and smooth for everyone. But I didn't do that, and I'm really proud of myself for not doing that. So I got back to them and he explained the contract to me, and I still didn't feel right about signing it. He basically said, oh, well, it's really unlikely that this happens, that we option it into a movie. It just is in the contract because, just to sort of cover us. But it's that,
to cover us.
That won't happen, basically.
Why is it there?
Exactly. It's like, why is it there? So again, it's like he was sort of trying to persuade me to just sign it. And again, it spoke to that part of me that just wants to sign it and not cause a fuss. But it didn't feel right still for me to do that. So at this point, it was like, okay, I might just have to walk away from this. If they're insisting that I sign this contract in order for the episode to get released, then I might just have to walk away and say no. And that's like 6 months of work that will be flushed down the toilet. But standing up for yourself is like this, and advocating for yourself as an artist means sometimes you have to walk away. So I sort of communicated that, and he got back to me saying, oh, well, we have like a minimum terms version of the contract, so you can sign that one if you want. And the minimum terms was just a very basic release, just giving them permission to use the story for this one episode, which is what I wanted. So again, it's like you already had that minimum terms contract, why not just send me that in the first place? So I didn't have to go through this because it was quite difficult for me. It caused me a lot of anxiety and stress having to do this email exchange. But yeah, in the end, I just signed the minimum terms contract and it all worked out.
Yeah.
And it was fine.
Good.
So yeah, stand up for yourself. Don't just give in to that impulse to just sign.
No, it's a starting point. It's just a starting point of the negotiation. Excuse me. It's a conversation. A contract is a conversation, and also it's two people who are, sometimes more, of course, but two different, organizations or two different viewpoints, and it is about coming together and finding a way in which that you can work together effectively, a boundaried way that protects both of you. So it's important. It's important to get a lawyer. Pay a lawyer. You can do it online and have a session with a lawyer on Zoom, and they'll read through the contract and tell you what it means. Or you can do your own research. You could ask the person. Break it down every paragraph what this means if you trust them enough to do that, and negotiate. Don't just get hypnotized by the carrot, because I see a lot of people who are sort of in circles around me, artists who have signed contracts, and it's just like they just get bamboozled big time. And I've been sort of feel a bit abused in the past from contracts myself when I was younger. So, I've signed a few, and some of them haven't been in my interest, really. I thought they were at the time. I remember I signed a contract to release under Tundra, a sort of techno thing I did a while ago, and I signed it over to a label in Spain, and they own it. They own the track, and they put the track up, and it had like 50,000 plays or whatever, but it doesn't mean anything though. Like, and they own it, so like, yeah, it just seems like, what does that mean to me? I don't know. So yeah, a friend of mine signed a contract for 4 years to do an album release. He couldn't play gigs for 4 years. He couldn't release any music for those 4 years. And he didn't negotiate any options in the contract for them to have to do things over that period of time. Just signed it, and they didn't do anything. And they didn't release the album on vinyl, which they discussed. It wasn't in the contract. And they did nothing for him apart from stop him from releasing, stop him from playing shows. So, it's a hard lesson to learn. Better that you just learn vicariously through others and not do that yourself, because why?
Yeah, I think also it's like knowing the value of your own work and like the preciousness of the work, and the time that you've put into it, and how unique you are as a person, and how no one else could have created the work that you have. Because I think when I was in this negotiation with this story for this podcast, I think there's also a part of me that's like, oh, well, I need to sign the contract and get this episode released, because I might not have another opportunity to do this, and I'm sure they have loads of other stories that they can release, so they don't give a shit about it, really. So it's kind of like this sort of power dynamic of, well, there's hundreds of other artists that we can find who do the same work, and you're not that special, kind of thing, which I think also can play out in these power dynamics. Well, hundreds of thousands of people have submitted work, or thousands of designers have applied to be on this show.
That's a sign that they don't value you if they say that.
And it's like, yeah, but my work is me, and it's precious, and really feeling a sense of that, like they should want this story because it's good and I've worked hard on it, and it's me, it's unique, it's a unique perspective. So I think also that just really, really understanding the value of what you do and who you are.
Yeah, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not do it, because you're communicating to the universe that you won't accept this in your life, and the universe will respond. It'll be like, okay, do you accept this? Do you accept this? No. And it will manifest something more harmonious. But just don't settle. There's a good story about Sylvester Stallone. It's a shame because he's like Trump's fucking little bum rag. Which is a shame. But there's a really good story where he talks about when he wrote Rocky, because he was just broke in a like apartment with nothing in it, and him and his dog, and like he wanted to be the star. He knew that he needed to be the star of the script. He'd been writing scripts for a long time, and he wrote this script in like 3 days without sleeping or something. And he knew that it had huge value, and he took it to the studio, and they turned it down, and he took it to another studio, and they offered him like 50,000 for the script, but they wanted a leading man who was known, right? They weren't going to accept him as the leading role, so they offered him this 50,000, and he turned it down, and like he didn't have money to eat or anything, and eventually he had to sell his dog.
Oh.
had to sell his dog. And then he negotiated eventually with the same studio, and they gave him, I think it was like a couple of 100,000, and he could be the leading guy. And then when he got that money, he bought his dog back. It always stuck with me, that did, because it's like, you're going to get tested on it. Like, you're going to be in a situation where the money could be really useful, and you've got to be willing to say no. You've got to be willing to say no. You have to be willing to walk away. It's like, it's the only way that you're ever going to move forward, is like because they can feel it. Like, the other person can feel it. If you are prepared to walk over it, like, if this does not work for me, I am walking. That is the type of energy that I think you need to go into any type of negotiation with. Because, like, if you're just going to settle, like, they can sense that, and they will, they'll just use that against you. Just be willing to walk, because that's where the power is. I don't need you. I don't need you and your validation and your money and I don't need it. So
that's the real value.
Yeah.
We'd really love it if you could help us to grow the podcast and grow the community. So if there's anyone you have in your life who you think might enjoy Pivotal Slice, please do recommend. It goes a long way.
It does, and you can subscribe to our Patreon for as little as £3. You can also pay a bit more and get exclusive episodes and juicy content.
Or if you fancy buying us a coffee, that would help us a lot to keep growing and give us a little energy boost.
You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, Audible. You can rate us on Spotify, and you can engage us on YouTube by liking, commenting, and subscribing. This will go a long way in moving through the algorithm universe.